That's better. Hare Krishna, welcome everybody. Who is here for the first time? Okay. So this is my first talk here on Sunday, so as it was mentioned, I'm from Zurich, Switzerland, so when you hear of a place, you have certain associations. Does it happen to you? Yes. What's your association when you think of Switzerland? What else? Come on, work with me, people. Money laundering, right? Okay. Have you heard of Heidi? Who knows Heidi? No? Okay. So there's a certain association with that. The mind goes in a certain place. And we work with images, we work with pictures. That's just how the mind works. You imagine situations and it gives you certain associations, so to speak. Many people who had near-death experiences have mentioned that just before it seemed like it was game over, that their whole life went past them, like a short review, the whole movie. And we're going to discuss the Bhagavad Gita, which is the most important yoga text, the Vedic literatures, a verse from the 8th chapter. There's a whole sequence, actually, but I'm just going to focus on text number 6. That's a nice beat. You going to do some more kirtan? Do you do Jayarada Madhava usually, or what? Yeah? All right, shall we? Okay, if I get something to bang on. A little more chanting, then we'll be right with you. So this is a song that we sing before we recite from the Bhagavad Gita. And it glorifies Krishna in his different names. And we'll explain it a little later. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopidana Balabha Girivaradhari Jayo Gopidana Balabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Bradadana Ranjana Yasodanandana Bradadana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Yamuna Tira Banachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopirana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodhanandana Bradadana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Banachari Jayo Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. So this song describes Krishna's different names, that he's the darling of Mother Yasoda, and he has many wonderful associates, so his different relationships are glorified in this beautiful song. The text that we're discussing today is the 6th verse of the Bhagavad Gita. Yam yam vapi smaram bhavam tyajante ante kalevaram tam tamevaiti kaunteya sada tad bhava bhavita. Whatever state of being one remembers when one quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail. This is Krishna speaking to Arjuna. Purport. The process of changing one's nature at the critical moment of death is here explained. A person who at the end of his life quits his body thinking of Krishna attains the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. But it is not true that a person who thinks of something other than Krishna attains the same transcendental state. This is a point we should note very carefully. How can one die in the proper state of mind? Marj Bharat, although a great personality, thought of a deer at the end of his life, and so in his next life he was transferred into the body of a deer. Although as a deer he remembered his past activities, he had to accept that animal body. Of course, one's thoughts during the course of one's life accumulate to influence one's thoughts at the moment of death. So this life creates one's next life. If in one's present life one lives in the mode of goodness and always thinks of Krishna, it is possible for one to remember Krishna at the end of one's life. That will help one be transferred to the transcendental nature of Krishna. If one is transcendentally absorbed in Krishna's service, then his next body will be transcendental, spiritual, not material. Therefore, the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the best process for successfully changing one's state of being at the end of one's life. Om Ajnanatimirandasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Jena Tasmai Sri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kedamayam Dadhati Swapadantikam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Mukam karoti vachalam pangum langayate girim yat kripadamaham vande Sri Guru Dinataranam Paramananda Madhavam Sri Chaitanyeshwaram Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripasindubhya evacha Patitanam pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna. Life is a preparation for death. In today's society, death is not very much appreciated. In fact, people want to get rid of death. They want to put it somewhere where it's not seen, where it's not perceived. In fact, it's considered to be defeat. Yet, in a wisdom culture, death is very much part of life, as life is part of death, because it is all part of the same cycle. because whatever is born has to die. That is part of the cycle of life. So how can you celebrate life without acknowledging or celebrating death? It's kind of one-sided, right? So you're going to have the whole cycle. You got to have both. But somehow we can't really deal so well with death. Nowadays, especially, anybody starts coughing, you go like, whoa. Okay, do you have the bug? All right, stay away from me. All right. But we don't realize that the death rate is still 100%, last time we checked. Here in San Diego, what's the death rate, approximately? 100%. You sure? Scientifically speaking? Roughly, around about 100%, right? Which means that in 100 years, nobody of us will be here in this very form, in this body. So, here in the Gita, Krishna tells us that the consciousness we have at the end of life, that will determine our next body, our next destination, because it's the sum total of our accumulated information, of our accumulated impressions. That will determine, that will be our ticket to the next body, to the next life form. So that can be either something very exciting or something very scary. What's the sum total of your impressions in your mind right now? You want to do a little inventory? Kring, 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 chring. Huh? What's the inventory of your sum total of your impressions of your mind right now? And then just imagine what kind of a life form am I going to attain? Is that something desirable or is that something scary? What do you reckon? Anyway, it's an interesting thought. You can do this as a mind experiment for, the rest of the weekend. So the yoga texts help us to upgrade our consciousness so that when that moment comes, that moment of death, that we're actually ready, we're actually prepared, and we have done the most we can to remember the right thing. So the goal is really to attain a higher destination, not to be born in the material world, which is a place of birth and death. And for that reason, we have a lot of not just information, but we have a lot of spiritual activities, spiritual practices that help us to situate ourselves on this platform of Krishna consciousness. Just like the chanting of this mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, which is non-different from Krishna, because on the spiritual platform, the person and the name are non-different. Nama Chintamani Krishna's Chaitanya Rasa Vigraha Purna Shuddha Nitya Mukta Binatvam Nama Namino. The Nama and the Nami, the possessor of the name and the name are non-different. Here, when I say water, 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 I don't feel the water. In fact, I want to see, is there water in here? Yes, there's water in here. I want to. But in the spiritual realm, when I say Krishna, 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 Krishna is actually present because the name and the person are non-different. And you can experience that when you chant Hare Krishna, as you all just have a moment ago, right? Did you feel there was a special energy, there was a special vibration here, present? People were chanting and dancing, not being self-conscious, not being concerned of their style or their gender or their background or their education or their lack thereof, but just being blissfully aware of one's spiritual nature, one's spiritual identity. So if somebody would say, you want to go to Switzerland, then you'd say, well, what is it like? What's the place like? Today in Balboa Park, I met a lady from Boston, and she said there's 2 feet of snow right now. I'm very happy to be in San Diego. I met a man from Moscow, and he said it's like -10 there right now. And I remember one time in middle of January, I was in Novosibirsk in Siberia, and it was minus 35. Now, you don't know what minus 35 is, because I don't think you see snow here very much. Do you? Not really. We just came down through LA, and just before you head down into LA, when you come from, on the 5, from up north from San Francisco, there's those little mountains, you know? I mean, they call them mountains. We call them like hills, you know? And there was snow up there. And it was huge, huge crowds of people who just went to play in the snow, just to touch the snow and snow play. They were really excited about snow. When you live in the Alps or in Siberia, you're not that excited about snow. So I was there once in the middle of January. It was minus 35. Minus 35 is so cold that you don't feel your face. It becomes like a mask. It just freezes. And if you spit, it turns into ice before it hits the floor. In fact, you can't turn off the engine because it won't start. My friend told me he was distributing books, Bhagavad Gitas, on a parking lot in Siberia, and it's so cold that people can't turn the engine off. Otherwise, you can't start it because it will freeze. So usually the man waits in the car while the family goes shopping, which is very good because he could just go up to all the drivers and give them books. But one family, the whole family went out shopping, and when they came back, the car wouldn't start. And he was really in anxiety because that's a real problem when your engine doesn't start. So the man opened the hood, and he was poking around with his screwdriver, trying to get the thing to work. And we're getting to the text, don't worry. We're getting there. And so my friend went up to him and showed him the Bhagavad Gita, and the man said, look, I don't believe in any of this, you know. And he said, no, this is spiritual, you know, like this will really help you. And he said, if there is a God, let him start my engine. If he starts my engine, I'm down with that, as they say in California. And as the man was saying, if there is a God, let him start my engine, he was poking around with his screwdriver, and the engine started working, you know? And he was like, oh, okay, what is that book? Give me that book. And he took the book. So out today in Balboa Park, what did we see? We saw acrobatics, we saw magicians, we saw musicians. Have you been to Balboa Park? Have you all been there? If not, you missed out, you know? It's quite something. It's quite a spectacle of what's happening there. So if you want to see the magic, hear what Krishna does. So there's two policemen in Delhi walking down the street, and they're talking to each other. And one tells to the other, you know, it's really bad. We worship a God who is a thief. You know, Krishna is known as Makanchor. He's known as the butter thief, the one who steals butter. And well, we're policemen, you know, like we're working for the law, we're working for the government. How can we worship a God who steals? How is this possible? And the other policeman says, look, you don't get it right. Krishna is stealing everyone's hearts. He's stealing everyone's hearts because he's doing such supremely naughty and attractive things. Just like when you see the magician and he's stealing people's watch and he's misplacing objects and he's making things disappear and then he again makes them appear. It's very attractive, isn't it? Have you ever wondered how they do it? Have you ever seen a guy working his hat and pulling out rabbits and stuff or balls and making them disappear? It's quite attractive, isn't it? You wonder, how does he do it? Now, Krishna is a supreme magician. So one time, Krishna, he went because his mother put him down. First she was breastfeeding him, but then she saw that the milk was overboiling on the stove in the kitchen. So she put Krishna down, baby Krishna, and she went into the kitchen to tend after the milk. But Krishna, he got angry because he was not satisfied. He was not yet fully content. So he went over and he went into the storage room and he took some stones and he threw them at a pot of butter that was hanging from the ceiling. And as the butter was dripping down, he was tasting it and he was feeding it to the monkeys. And when Mother Yasoda came, there was also crows there that came to eat it. And when Mother Yasoda came, all the animals, of course, left, and Krishna ran. And she saw the whole mess, and she was chasing after Krishna. So you might question, what has Krishna, what has God got to do with stealing butter? Because Krishna, he's not subjected to the rules of this world. So he can make rules and he can break rules. He's above the law. Don't you like hear stories of outlaws who don't care about the law? They can do whatever they want. Either they're superheroes or supervillains. Now, Krishna, he steals the butter, and at the same time, he attracts everyone to his pastime, so much so that thousands of years later, people are still speaking about Krishna stealing butter. Another time, Krishna heard a village woman call out, "Anybody wants fruits? I got fruits here. Come and get fruits." And Krishna did as he had seen his parents do. He picked up a few grains in his small hands. He was very young. He could just barely walk straight. And as he walked out there with the grains, to barter the grains, to trade them against the fruits, most of these grains fell on the floor. So he had only a few grains left in his hands. And he offered them to the lady. And the village lady, she was so enamored, she was so mesmerized by Krishna's beauty that she just gave him all the fruit he could carry. She just loaded him up. She just piled him up with a whole lot of fruit. And Krishna walked back home. And as she turned around, she looked into her fruit basket, and it wasn't empty. It was full with jewels and gold and pearls. So when Krishna came home, his mother, Mother Yasoda, she asked, "Where do you get those fruits?" He said, "There was this vendor. I went out." She said, "You can't just go out and deal with strangers, huh? You can't just trust any person on the street." And Krishna asked her, "Ma, what does it mean not to trust people?" So, all these dealings, all these interactions, they attract our minds. So much so that songs, entire books, dramas, art, poetry has been dedicated to the pastimes of Krishna. So when we absorb ourselves in Krishna's activities, we become attracted to Krishna, and there's a very good chance that at the end of our life, we will actually remember Krishna. And thus we will go back to Krishna. Otherwise, if we have other types of remembrances, then very much likely those memories will take us to that place. So what's in your mind right now? Take a screenshot of your mental screen, of your mental imagery. Where are you? Survival mode? Anxiety mode? Enlightenment mode? Where are you? Because that will determine our future life. So the Bhagavad Gita is like a roadmap. It's giving us very clear direction, not just of where is north, but how to navigate in this world of names and develop our attraction for Krishna. So when Srila Prabhupada came in 1965 to America on a boat, the Jaladuta, he brought this Vedic wisdom, and his mission was to share it with the world. When he started out, there was very few people who paid attention. For almost a year, hardly anybody showed up. And he was alone in New York City, in the Lower East Side, walking the streets, the winter of New York, oftentimes going hungry because he didn't have money to buy food, because the only money he got was from selling his books. And he was 70 years old, so he placed books in a few bookstores, and he went around every other week to see how his sales were doing and supplying new books, and that's the way how he maintained himself. And one person who used to take a liking to Prabhupada was Robert Nelson. Now, Robert Nelson was what you would call a slow. He was not working. He was on welfare. He was a simple man, yet he took a great liking to the Swami, to Prabhupada. And whenever Prabhupada had something that he required, Robert would try to get it for him. Whether it be a rug or a lamp or something, Robert, he had connections, and he was very happy to get things for Prabhupada. One time Prabhupada asked him, "Would you like me to cook for you?" And Robert said yes. So they went to the store, and Srila Prabhupada, he picked out different groceries and put them. And the lady at the cash register, she was going ching, 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 kring, ching, 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 kring, ching, 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 kring. Do you remember those days? Huh? Some of you do. Mostly not, huh? And then she said, "So that'll be $15.25. And Srila Prabhupada said, "That's too much. It can't be that much. I'll give you half." Because in India you bargain, right? Right? You never pay the asking price. You bargain. Yeah? She said, no, fixed price. You can't bargain. It's what the store says. This is what I have to get for it. And Srila Prabhupada said, "No, you don't understand. I have bought these items many times. I never paid that much for these items." She said, "I'm sorry, this is the price." He said, "Look, we're not doing this for ourselves. We're doing this to serve God. So she said, "Okay, give what you can," and she paid the rest. So then they went home, and Srila Prabhupada cooked, and he offered it to Krishna, and then they took prasadam together, and then they took a nap. So why I'm telling all this? Because stories give us association, give us impressions, and impressions develop attraction. So where is my attraction right now? Where is my mind? Where is my heart at this very moment? With Srila Prabhupada, right? An old man walking around New York City, no money in his pocket, no connections, no help, no friends. But he had a very burning, a very ardent desire to share this message with one and all. So he started out in a little storefront, just a little shop, 26 2nd Avenue. And if you look at the videos, the people who came there, they were really out of it. They were really compromised. I mean, the majority was really pretty stoned on LSD and acids and all kinds of stuff. Yet Srila Prabhupada, he treated each and every person that walked through the door as the future leader of the Hare Krishna movement. And guess what happened? They became the future leaders of the Hare Krishna movement. As unlikely as it may seem. So, the process of yoga is about connection. It's about association. So, what I consider near and dear, what I consider valuable, what I consider endearing is what I will associate with, and that will determine my future life. That's the good news, and that's the scary news. So the next time you jump down rabbit holes, have you ever jumped down a rabbit hole virtually? You gone on a little research project on Google, and a couple hours later, you wondered, where did this whole thing started? How did I get here? Huh? Has this ever happened to you? Any show of hands? Anybody? Yeah? Thank you for your honesty. Huh? So, and sometimes you get down the rabbit hole, you don't know how you got there, and you don't know how to get back to where you came from. So, till you just have to kind of, okay, close all windows. Just let's start from fresh here. Let's start a different chapter here. Let's start a different type of an approach. So what's Krishna trying to teach us here is very simple, that the moment of death is really the great exam. It's really the test. And every night when we go to sleep, it's like a mini death, because you have to kind of let go so you can fall asleep. You notice that point where you actually let go is when you fall asleep, when you stop trying to hang on to thoughts and things and make plans, you actually let go. That's when you fall asleep. So it's like a mini death, so to speak. So this helps us to prepare for the final exam when we have to let go of this body. And to remember Krishna, to remember spiritual reality, requires that I live in spiritual reality right now, during my life. So it's not something I can put up for later. Sometimes people say, why are you talking about death? You know, there's a bunch of young people here and kids, and, you know, okay, some are middle-aged, you know, a few are elderly, but why are you talking about that? What does death mean? What does old age mean? Who can say that they're not about to die? Anybody? Nobody, right? There's no age factor in this. So, therefore, it's a good habit, it's a good practice to learn the art of dying means to learn the art of living. This is the science of Krishna consciousness. That is what we're here for. We're not just trying to smooth talk you and, you know, tell you some mystical, you know, kind of a thing that will make you feel a little better so you can get on with it and be a success and enjoy for another day in the material world. But we're here to reflect on the science of life, which includes also death, because you can't have one without the other, because they're really part of the same cycle. And unless we honor and value and appreciate both, we're really not there. We're really not seeing the full picture. I don't have a watch here, but I got a phone, so let me see. Oh, there's something here. Okay. We got time for questions and reflections. Yes.
Would you say that one of the pillars, one of the foundational elements of Krishna consciousness is whether or not we are this body or not? It seems to me like if we are this body, spiritual life has no meaning at all. But if we are this body, spiritual life has zero meaning, right? We are the body. But if we're not this body, then spiritual life has all the meaning in the world.
Thank you. It's a very important point. So, in any spiritual tradition, people have this understanding. It's kind of a given fact. It's kind of a foundational principle, so to speak, that that you're not this body. Then the question comes, well, what are you? If you're not the body, then what are you? That's the next logical question, right? Okay, I'm not this body. Fine, fair enough, because we know every cell is changing every 7 years, so I'm 53 years old. I already had more than 7 bodies. So what am I? That's the next natural question. So to just know what I'm not is not enough. I have to actually know what I am. In Sanskrit, in epistemology, there's a school called Nyaya, or logic, and there's the process of neti neti. Neti neti means not this and not that. And you analytically go about examining the elements and determining, okay, I'm not this, I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not that, I'm not that, but what are you? So to put it in positive language, in positive terminology, I'm Atma, I'm the life force, or the soul, the jiva, the spirit soul, the living entity, who is transmigrating through different bodies, and this body is just another body, like I've had so many. It's just another vehicle. It's just another shirt, so to speak. So yes, that is a foundational fact that is discussed in the Bhagavad Gita. Thank you for bringing it up. Any other points or reflections? Yes.
What should I be doing right now so that at the moment of death I can remember God?
Do you know when the moment of death will come?
No.
Not really, right? So then what do you reckon would be the best thing to do? Well, you tell me. Work with me, people.
Maybe think about it right now.
Yeah, because you don't know when that moment of death will come. So if you're consciously aware, welcome. If you're consciously aware of Krishna in all your aspects of your life, then whenever that moment will come, it won't really be that spectacular. In fact, the Vedic scripture says it's like lightning and thunder at the same time. They just strike simultaneously, and you just move on to the next body. It's not such a big of a deal. But because we have this phobia, we have this, this kind of existential fear, we think it's like it's game over. It's the end of it. It's like when the movie is over, you get up and you walk out of the movie theater, but life goes on, right? It's just the end of one episode, but something else starts or continues, so to speak. So learning the art of remembering Krishna right now, at this very moment. And that means not just while I'm sitting here, but also while I'm working, or while I'm dealing with the world, while I'm dealing with family and friends. Because you don't know when death will come. So, and it comes in weird places at weird times. It's not like you get a 7-day notice like Maharaj Parikshit. He knew he had 7 days to live. Very few people have that. I remember about 10 months ago, I was standing right in front of the temple with Rajendra Nandan Prabhu, who's a dear friend of mine, a gentleman and a scholar, and had very good humor. His laughter was classic. And we were just having a ball. We were just having a good time. And next thing I hear is he's got diagnosed with 4-stage cancer, and they told him we can cut you up and do all the do all the fun things that they do to people who have fourth stage. And he said, no, I'm going home. And he went home. And he just heard and chanted about Krishna. And after about 10 days, it got difficult for him. So he just fasted. He just stopped eating and drinking. And so within a little over 2 weeks from when he got notice, he was gone. He just took off like a rocket. So we don't know when our number comes up because there's no expiration date. Did you find an expiration date on your body? No, right? There's no expiration date. You know it's supposed to last 100 years, but how many people do you know who turned 100? That you know? Not a whole lot, right? Maybe somebody lives to 80, you think like, oh, good life, right? Full life. 70, okay, pretty good. So it's really about preparing ourselves and valuing every moment. That makes us a little bit more responsible in how we deal with time. Because in the mature world, you can spend a lot of time just wasting time. So spiritual life means becoming more aware, more appreciative of the time factor, and using it wisely, taking full advantage of every moment that we have. So that when that moment comes, we're prepared.
Hare Krishna. Okay. Thank you. Wonderful class as always. I had a question about some scars in the mind, impressions on the mind. And it's mostly about understanding, like, does one get new some scars that helps remember Krishna, or do we forget the old ones? And then also, how do we find that magic or that thing you're talking about of, like, with the relationships with others?
Thank you. Some scars are impressions. They're impressions in the mind. Everything that we do or hear or see, it leaves an impression in our mental landscape. Therefore, be mindful of what you expose yourself to, because it leaves an impression. So, the more you add spiritual impressions, the more the other impressions will fade out. So it's a gradual process. Just like if you have a container full of ink, you keep on pouring milk in there. How long do you have to pour milk in there till it's all milk and no more ink? It'll take a while, but eventually you'll get there. So, well, one good thing is you don't keep on adding ink, right? Because if you start mixing, then it really becomes messy. So keep on adding the good stuff, and the other impressions, they will become less and less and less. Right now, because you're fairly young and new to the practice, there's still a lot of noise, there's still a lot of turbulence, there's still a lot of intense impressions there. But after a while, that will settle down. Now, of course, you can take a stick and you can poke it and you can shake it up and stir the mud. And I'm sure, you can get excited, get something going. Yet, the more we absorb ourselves in spiritual practice, the less we will find the need to revisit those type of impressions and scenarios. We're not even attracted to contemplate, our former extracurricular activities, because we just see them for what they are. And we're not so attracted. We're not so impressed by that. Have you ever noticed that something that was really attractive and really enticing some time ago, right now has lost its appeal and its flavor, its taste? Has this ever happened to you? Have you gotten a little worried and a little anxious about that? That why doesn't this work the way it used to work for me before? It can be anything. It can be food. It can be activities. It can be things that you do. So it means you're refining yourself. You're progressing. You're actually making advancement. So don't get scared if all of a sudden certain things just don't seem so cool or so, spectacular anymore. That means you're making progress. You're making advancement. Other questions? Now, talking of thieves, as I was in Novosibirsk, Siberia, one person told me a really interesting story that I wanted to share with you, because it was a smaller group, so we had a little bit of sharing. And I asked people, so how do you got to the path, and how did you end up knowing about Krishna consciousness? I mean, it's Siberia, so it's not like... So one person said, actually, I was a thief. His speciality was he would climb houses, He wouldn't break the doors. He would climb houses and go in through the windows. So he said, one time, I was in an apartment building, and as I was in the kitchen, I heard some noise from the front door. And I knew the owner is coming. I got to run because this is dangerous. But I took all this trouble to come in here. I got to steal something. It was so much hard work to climb this building. So he just grabbed what he could. So he grabbed the book from the kitchen table and he got out the window and disappeared into the night. And when he was at home, he looked at it and it said, Bhagavad Gita. I mean, that's all I got. So let's see what's in there. And started reading. And Krishna started attracting him. And Krishna stole his heart. So, and then he regularly started visiting the temple with his friends, who were all kind of from similar backgrounds like him. And they had big cars, so they used to drive devotees around and do things. And the devotees, they asked them, so what do you do for a living? And they said, well, God takes care of everybody, right? So, and he was saying how it's funny that previously he looked at buildings and he would think, oh, I could go through here, could go through there, I could get in here. Oh, this looks very nice. Oh, this looks very good. And now I'm looking and I'm thinking, how can I help these people? How can I give them something valuable? And he said, now I'm still here after 10 years and I'm still trying to repay what I stole. Because he stole the Bhagavad Gita. So sometimes people steal books. It happens. We have book tables. There was 2 young boys in another city also in Far East in Russia. And they said they were professional pickpockets, young guys. He said one was distracting the devotee and the other one stole the book. And they also said that now, after so many years, we're still here trying to repay what we stole. Because there's interest, it's heavy interest, inflation keeps on increasing. So whichever way you become attracted to Krishna, that's all right. It's a matter of the heart. Bhakti means it's the process of loving devotion, to offer our affection to Krishna. Because attraction is stronger than aversion. It's not about being fearful or being in anxiety or being guilty. What is my attraction? That is where my heart goes. That is where my mind goes. That is where my consciousness goes. That is where I will go in my next life. So let us be mindful where we put our attention, where we put our affection, our attraction, because that will be our future birth. Other questions or reflections? Yes.
I just want to know, when we talk about association with Krishna and just, taking his name. So I just want to know how important is chanting, and we talk about doing 16 rounds or a certain number of rounds. So what is really important? Just calling out his name, or continuously chanting, or just a bit on that.
Continuous chanting is great, yet it's difficult because you got a job, you got a family, you got things to do. So if you keep on continuously chanting, that may take up pretty much all your time. So it will be difficult to do other things. But the goal really is constant absorption. But it's not that you have to always chant on beads or you have to always chant out loud. You can also chant in your mind. You can also, it's internal. So both are there. There are different types of japa. Those that are audible, those that are more silent, like we chant Gayatri mantra. There's some mantras that we chant silently. But the Maha Mantra can be chanted in all situations, in all circumstances. As you mentioned, what's really important is that we call out with attraction. There has to be a need, you see. If we're doing it mechanically, then it's kind of not hitting the spot, so to speak. Like if somebody calls out your name, depending on how they call your name, right, it's got a different impression on your mind. So if we put our heart into it, if we put our emotion into it, it will really be attracting Krishna's attention. In fact, Krishna says that I'm more attracted by the chastisement of the gopis, by the scolding of the gopis who chastise Krishna because he steals butter or he does mischievous things. He says that is more attractive to me than the songs of the Vedas. Why? Because it's more intimate. It's more personal. There's more affection there. There's more love there. The other is formal. It's grandeur. It's worship. It's all nice. But we like personal relationships, right? Just like I say, nice hat. Did you go to Cancun? Did you like it? Did you go to Tulum also? No? But Cancun, you had a good time there. Okay. So you see, there's an association. We connect. So, because it's something personal. In a similar way, if you address Krishna by his personal name, by his qualities, by his activities, by his place, where he's from, then immediately that attracts his attention. But if we just say, oh, God is great, and by the way, here's my shopping list, this is all the stuff I need. And please, like, fix the sink, and, my uncle's sick, and this and that, I have issues. Help me sort out that stuff. That can be done too, but it's not the same as if we're actually interacting with Krishna on a personal, on an affectionate, on a platform of love. So chanting is wonderful and it's important, yet we should not. Sometimes people think, oh, I got to do this much or that much or the other thing, otherwise I can't, So just chant. It's good if you have malas, if you have beads, and you can do rounds. And you start where you're at, and then you go on that journey. Okay? But don't think if I don't do 16 then I'm no good, or I can't do this. This is just too much. Like you tell people, oh, get up at this time and do this and don't do that. And they become frightened and they drop the ball and just walk straight out. Because nowadays, very few people are up for rules and regulations and you know. That's why we're very fortunate that Chaitanya Mahaprabhu is very merciful. He has lowered the bar. He said, you just take this chanting and you'll be good. So do what you can. And then do a little more, okay? But don't get discouraged, all right? Yes?
You've inspired a very simple question and kind of a heavy thought. The simple question is, and it was based on you talking about what happens when we say Krishna in the spiritual world. Is Sanskrit the conversational language that we speak in the spiritual world?
Sanskrit, a conversational language that we speak in the spiritual world. Well, in Vrindavan, they speak a different dialect. So depending which spiritual world you're going to, there's different languages.
Okay, that's mystifying, but also very
Yeah,
nice.
because there's different flavors, you know. God comes in many flavors. Because he acknowledges that there's different types of attraction, different types of affection. So it's not one shoe size fits all.
But his name will always be Krishna in whatever.
Krishna means the all-attractive, but he's got many names. He's got unlimited names. Some worship him under a different name. But that's not a problem. Because he's not limited. And he loves all his devotees.
It's such a beautiful language. I'd like to speak it conversationally. That's why I'm asking.
Yeah?
And the heavy thought is this, and it came off the final exam, that I'm realizing I've never passed. I'm still here. I've never passed that test. That's a heavy thought. So I got to stop cramming all night for the exam. I got to start really doing my homework because I'm still here.
Well, I'm glad you didn't pass the test, because so you're here, you know, so otherwise we couldn't have this conversation.
So all of us, let's take this semester very seriously. Let's do our
Yeah, because
midterms
otherwise
exams.
it's like if you become spiritual and poof, he's gone, you know, then it's like, okay, we cleaned out the whole room here, you know, like Hare Krishna Sunday feast, 50 people dead. That'd be breaking news, right? Huh? 50 people gone, boom, one shot. Huh? So that's why we'll stick around, you know, for as long as it takes, because you can't force the issue. We don't know. We have our plan. Krishna has his plan. Let's see who wins.
Had a comment. There is actually a place in Karnataka where they speak in Sanskrit conversationally. That's just the language of everyone. So you could maybe visit.
What's the name of
there.
the place?
Mattur in Karnataka, India. So that's Mattur. That's where people are known to speak Sanskrit. And there's even, I read about a lawyer in India who exclusively writes his documents on in Sanskrit. So he will like fight his case and write his stuff, everything in Sanskrit.
Okay.
And people have to, the judge and everyone has to, you know, accommodate that.
Okay.
So.
Okay, any final reflections, comments, questions? Well, thank you all for showing up.
We got to take her.
Maybe I'll ask a question. So what's going to happen to a transcendentalist who's practicing bhakti, but at the time of death, he's able to remember Krishna, but he still has unfulfilled desires?
It's there in the Gita. Your answer is there in the Gita. What's the verse? It's the one where Krishna says, Kaunteya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashyati. Krishna asks, what happens to a transcendentalist who doesn't succeed, who doesn't achieve perfection? You know? Huh? Yeah. Shuchinam shridmatam gehe joga brashto bijayate. You take birth in a good family where you get another chance. You get a better go at it. So there's no loss. It's all money in the bank. There's no inflation. There's no diminution on the spiritual path. Krishna says, Kantya pratijanihi name bhakta pranashati. You declared, Arjuna, my devotee never perishes. So whatever you do in bhakti, it's for your eternal benefit. So thank you for showing up. Wish you happy remembering of Krishna in all his names and forms and pastimes. And yeah, you're blessed. It's a good place to be in San Diego in January. Definitely beats Siberia. I can guarantee you that. I've been in Russia for 25 years. Spend more time there than our Russian friends. So, yeah, you're blessed in many ways. Count your blessings. Make the most of it. Thank you very much. Hare Krishna. August Prabhupada.
And we're blessed to have another session of Kirtan. So if we could put our mats on the corner there and come to the center for more chanting.